Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Chapter 16. Narrative continued by the doctor. How the ship was abandoned. It was about 1:30. 3 bells in the sea freeze, and the 2 boats went ashore from the Hispaniola. The captain, the squire, and I were talking matters over in the cabin. That had there been a breath of wind, we should have fallen on the 6 mutineers who were left aboard with us, slipped our cable, and away to sea. But the wind was wanting, and, to complete our helplessness, down came Hunter with the news that Jim Hawkins had slipped into a boat, and was gone ashore with the rest. It never occurred to us to doubt Jim Hawkins, but we were alarmed for his safety. With the men in this temper they were in, it seemed even chance if we should see the lad again. We ran on deck. The pitch was bubbling in the seams, and the nasty stench of the place turned me sick. If ever a man smelt fever and dentistry, it was that abominable anchorage. The 6 scoundrels were sitting grumbling under a sail in the forecastle. Ashore we could see the gigs made fast, a man sitting in each, hard by where the river runs. One of them was whistling "Le Laburo." Waiting was a strain, and it was decided that Hunter and I should go ashore with the jolly boat in a quest for information. The gigs leaned to the right, but Hunter and I pulled straight in the direction of a stockade upon the chart. The 2 who were left guarding their boats seemed to bustle at our appearance. Le Libero stopped off, and I could see that the pair discussing what they ought to do. Had they gone and told Silver? Oh, that might turn out differently, but they had their orders, I suppose, and decided to sit quietly where they were and hark back again to Lilliborough. There was a slight bend in the coast, and I steered so as to put it between us, and even before we landed we had thus lost sight of the gigs. I jumped out and came as near running as I could durst, and a big silk handkerchief under my hat for coolness' sake, and a brace of pistols ready primed for safety. I had not gone 100 yards when I came to the stockade. This was how it was. A spring of clear water rose almost at the top of the knoll. Well, on the knoll, enclosing the spring, they had clapped a stout log house to hold 2 scores people on a pitch, a loophole for musketry. On every side, all round this they had cleared a wide space, and then things were completely by appalling 6 feet high, without door or opening, too strong to pull down without time of labour, and too open to shelter the besiegers, and people in the log house had them in every way. They stood quiet in shelter and shot the others like partridges. All they wanted was to have a good watch and food, for short of a complete surprise. They might have held the place against a regime, and what particularly took my fancy was the spring, for though we had a good enough place of it in the cabin of the Hispaniola, with plenty of arms and ammunition, we and things to eat, and excellent wines, there were been one thing overlooked. We had no water. I was thinking this over when we came ringing over the island the cry of a man at the point of death. I was not new to violent death. I'd served His Royal Highness in the Duke of Cumberland, and got a wound myself at Fontenoy. But I know my pulse when dot and carry one. Jim Hawkins is gone, was my first thought. But it was something to have been an old soldier, but more still to have a doctor. There's no time for dilly-dally in our work. And so, now, I made up my mind instantly, and no time lost to return to shore and jumped on board the jolly boat. By good fortune Hunter had pulled a good oar, and we made water fly, and the boat was soon alongside, and I was aboard the schooner. I found them all shaken was a natural. The squire was sitting down as white as a sheet, and thinking of harm he led us to a good soul, and one of the 6 forecastle hands was a little better. "There's a man," says Captain Smollett. nodding towards him. New to this work, he came a nigh hand, fainting, doctor, when he heard the cry. Another touch of the rudder, and the man would join us. I told my plan to the captain, and between us we settled on the details of its accomplishment. We pulled old Redruth into the gallery, and between the cabins and the forecastle, with 3 or 4 loaded muskets and a mattress for protection. Hunter brought the boat round under the stem ports, and Joyce and I set to work loading her with powder tins, muskets, bags of biscuits, kegs of pork, and a cask of cognac, and my invaluable medicine chest. In the meantime, the squire and the captain stayed on deck, and the latter hailed to the coxswain, who was the principal man aboard. "Mr. Hands," he said, "here are 2 of us with a brace of pistols each. If any one of you sick make a signal of description, that man's dead." They were a good deal taken aback, and after a few little consultations, one and all tumbled down the fort companion, thinking there no doubt to take us on the rear. But when they saw Redruth waiting for them in the spar gallery, they went about the ship at once, and their head popped out again on deck. "Down, dog!" cried the captain, and the head popped back very again, and we heard no more for the time of these six very faint-hearted seamen. By this time, tumbling things as they came in, we had the jolly boat loaded as we much dared. Joyce and I got through the stern port, and we made for shore again as fast as oars could take us. This second trip, fairly aroused the watchers by the shore. Lilliborough was dropped again just before we lost sight of them by the little point. One of them whipped ashore and disappeared. I'd half a mind to change my plan and destroy their boats, but I feared that Silver and the others might be close at hand, and all might very well be lost by trying too much. We had soon touched land in the same place as before, and to set provisions in blockhouse. All 3 made the first journey, heavily laden, and tossed our stores by the palisade. Then, leaving Joyce to guard them, 1 man to be sure, but with a half-dozen muskets, Hunter and I returned to the jolly boat, and loaded ourselves once more. So we proceeded without pausing to take breath, until the whole cargo was bestowed. When the 2 servants took up their position in the blockhouse, I, with all my power, sculled back to the Hispaniola. Then we should have risked a second boat-load, seems more daring than it really was, and then had the advantage of numbers, had daring of course. We had the advantage of arms. Not 1 man ashore had a musket, and before they could get within range for pistol shooting, we'd flattered ourselves we'd be able to give a good account of half a dozen at least. The squire was waiting for me at the stern window, and all his faintness gone from him. He caught a painter and made it fast. We fell loading the boat for our very lives. Pork, powder, and biscuit was at the cargo, with a musket and a cutlass apiece for Squire and me and Redruth and the captain. The rest of the arms and powder we dropped overboard in 2 fathoms and a half of water, so we could see the bright steel shining far below us in the sun, on clean sandy bottom. By this time the tide had begun to ebb, and the ship was swinging around to her anchor. Voices were heard faintly hallooing in the direction of the 2 gigs, and though this reassured us for Joyce and Hunter, we were well to the eastward. It warned our party to be off. Redruth retreated from his place to the gallery, and dropped to the boat, and we then brought round to the ship's counter to be handier for Captain Smollett. "Now, men," he said, "do you hear me?" There was no answer from the forecastle. "It's to you, Abraham Graham. I am speaking to you." And still no reply. "Gray," resumed Mr. Smollett a little louder, "I am leaving this ship, and I order you to follow your captain. I know you are a good man at the bottom, and I dare say not one of the lot as you as bad as he makes out. I have my watch here in my hand. I give you 30 seconds to join me in." There was a pause. "Come," "My fine fellow," continued the captain, "don't hang so long on stays. I'm risking my life and the lives of these good gentlemen every second." There was a sudden scuffle, a sound of blows, and a burst of Aberson Grow with a knife cut on the side of the cheek, and came running with the captain, like a dog to the whistle. "I'm with you, sir," he said. The next moment he and the captain had dropped aboard of us. We had shoved off and given way. We were clear out of the ship, but not yet ashore in our stockade.